Imagine two people sitting in the same office. They arrived around the same time years ago. They earn nearly identical salaries. They complain about the same workload, take lunch at similar places, and leave work at roughly the same hour every evening. From the outside, their lives look almost interchangeable. But fast forward 20 years. One of them checks their investment account occasionally, mostly out of curiosity. The balance has grown steadily enough that retirement feels less like a question and more like a timeline. The other avoids looking at financial statements altogether, not because they're irresponsible, but because the numbers never seem to move in a meaningful way. Savings rise slightly, then disappear during emergencies, repairs, or unexpected expenses. Same career, same economy, same opportunities, completely different financial outcomes. What changed wasn't income. It was behavior, small, nearly invisible decisions repeated over thousands of ordinary days. Most people assume wealth is created through major moments: a promotion, a successful business, a lucky investment, a sudden breakthrough that changes everything at once. But real wealth rarely announces itself that way. It forms quietly, often unnoticed, while life appears completely normal. And that misunderstanding is where most financial struggles begin. Because when people believe wealth requires extraordinary events, they overlook the ordinary systems that actually produce it. Consider how most financial journeys unfold. Early adulthood begins with optimism. The first paycheck feels like independence. Spending reflects long delayed freedom, upgrading small comforts that once felt out of reach. Nothing excessive, just improvements that make life feel earned. A better apartment because commuting is exhausting. A reliable car because time matters now. Subscriptions, conveniences, and small upgrades that gradually become part of daily life. Each decision feels reasonable. Each expense fits comfortably within income. And because nothing feels reckless, there's no sense that anything is going wrong. Savings become something postponed rather than rejected. I'll start investing once my salary increases. I'll focus on saving after things stabilize. I just need to get through this phase first. The phase never fully ends. Income grows, but expectations grow alongside it. What once felt like luxury slowly becomes normal. Expenses stop feeling optional and start feeling necessary. Years pass without a clear financial turning point, just steady work and steady consumption. Then one day, usually much later than expected, a realization arrives quietly. Despite years of effort, financial security still feels distant. This moment confuses people because they did everything they believed they were supposed to do. They worked consistently. They avoided obvious financial mistakes. They earned more over time. Yet wealth never seemed to accumulate. The reason is uncomfortable, but surprisingly simple. Wealth is not the natural result of earning money. It is the result of following specific rules about how money behaves over long periods of time. And most people were never taught those rules. Instead, they rely on intention. They plan to save when possible, invest when convenient, adjust later if necessary. But intention struggles against human psychology. Spending delivers immediate satisfaction. Saving delivers delayed relief. Investing delivers outcomes that may not appear for years. Our brains naturally prioritize what feels urgent today over what matters decades from now. So financial progress becomes reactive rather than structured. Money is saved when extra cash appears. Investments are made inconsistently. Financial decisions depend on motivation, and motivation changes constantly. Over time, this creates a pattern that feels harmless in the short term, but decisive in the long term. Wealth requires consistency. Human behavior defaults to inconsistency. That gap explains why two people with similar incomes can arrive at entirely different futures. One unknowingly follows a system. The other unknowingly follows impulses shaped by circumstance. Neither decision feels dramatic in the moment, but compounded across decades, the difference becomes enormous. Here's what makes this especially important. Building wealth does not require extraordinary intelligence, perfect timing, or unusually high income. What it requires is alignment with a small set of principles that allow time and compounding to work in your favor instead of against you. These principles are simple enough to understand quickly, yet they are violated constantly because they contradict instinct. They ask you to prioritize the future when the present feels louder. They ask for consistency when flexibility feels easier. They ask for patience in a world optimized for immediacy. Over time, however, these rules begin to change something deeper than your bank balance. They change how money flows through your life. Instead of constantly reacting to expenses, you begin shaping outcomes before they happen. Financial stability stops feeling accidental and starts feeling predictable. And that transformation doesn't come from complicated strategies. And this is where most people misunderstand wealth. They think wealth begins with investing. It doesn't. Wealth begins with behavior. Because before money grows in markets, it grows in habits. Before returns compound, decisions compound. And the truth is uncomfortable but simple. Most financial struggles don't come from lack of income, they come from lack of structure. So, let's finally talk about the system itself. The four rules are not complicated. In fact, their simplicity is exactly why people ignore them. They sound almost too basic to matter, but together, they quietly reshape how money moves through your life. And everything starts with the first rule. Rule 1. Pay yourself first. Imagine your salary arriving in your account. For most people, the sequence looks predictable. Bills are paid, groceries are bought, subscriptions renew automatically. Small expenses slip through unnoticed. And whatever remains at the end of the month, if anything remains, becomes savings. This feels logical, but financially it is backwards. Wealthy individuals reverse the order entirely. Saving is not what happens after spending. Saving happens before spending begins. This principle is known as paying yourself first, and it has been repeated for decades in financial research because it works at a psychological level, not just a mathematical one. When savings become automatic, decision fatigue disappears. You are no longer relying on motivation or discipline every month. The system makes the decision for you. Behavioral economists have consistently shown that automation dramatically increases saving success because humans adapt to whatever income appears available. A famous example comes from retirement savings research, showing participation rates rise sharply when contributions are automatic rather than optional. A concept explained through behavioral finance studies summarized by the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's guidance on automatic savings systems. And something interesting happens once this rule is applied. Your lifestyle quietly adjusts downward to fit what remains. Not painfully, not dramatically, just naturally. Because humans are incredibly good at normalizing whatever spending level becomes routine. This is why two people earning the same salary can end up living completely different financial lives. One constantly stressed, the other steadily building security, simply because one treated savings as mandatory, while the other treated it as optional. The goal is not to save huge amounts immediately. Even starting with 10–20% of income changes long-term outcomes dramatically, because consistency matters more than intensity. And that leads directly to the second rule, the rule that actually turns savings into wealth. Rule 2. Make your money work. Saving money alone does not build wealth. It only creates stability. Real wealth begins when money starts generating money on its own. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Cash sitting idle quietly loses purchasing power over time because of inflation. Prices rise, currencies weaken, and money that stays still gradually buys less than it once did. This is why investing is not a luxury reserved for experts. It is a necessity for anyone thinking long-term. Historically, broad stock market investments have rewarded patience. The S&P 500, which tracks hundreds of major U.S. companies, has delivered roughly around 10% average annual returns over long periods when dividends are included. That number matters because of one powerful force: compounding. Compounding means returns begin earning their own returns. Growth stops being linear and becomes exponential. A simple mental shortcut investors use is the Rule of 72. By dividing 72 by your annual return rate, you can estimate how long money takes to double. At a 9% return, investments double roughly every 8 years. a concept widely explained in financial education resources like Breakdown of the Rule of 72. Think about what that means in real life. Money invested at 25 behaves completely differently from money invested at 35, even if the monthly amount is the same. Time becomes the most valuable asset you own. And this is where many people make a costly mistake. They wait until they feel ready to invest. They wait for higher income, perfect knowledge, or market certainty. But markets reward participation more than perfection, because missing early years of compounding often matters more than choosing the perfect investment. Rule 1, created savings. Rule 2 gives those savings a job. Your money stops sitting still and starts building momentum, quietly, consistently, often invisibly at first. And once these two rules are in place, something shifts psychologically. You stop working only for money. Money slowly begins working for you. And this is usually the point where people believe they've figured money out. They start saving, they begin investing, they feel financially responsible for the first time. But surprisingly, this is also where many wealth journeys quietly stall, because earning, saving, and investing are only half the system. The next two rules determine whether wealth actually stays and grows, or slowly disappears despite good income and smart investments. Rule 3, control lifestyle inflation. Most financial failures don't happen because people stop earning. They happen because spending rises at the exact same speed as income. A promotion comes in, and suddenly the apartment upgrades. A salary increase arrives, and monthly expenses expand to match it. Better restaurants, newer gadgets, more subscriptions, more convenience spending. Nothing feels excessive individually, but together they erase progress. This pattern is called lifestyle inflation, and economists consider it one of the biggest obstacles to long-term wealth building because it happens gradually and feels deserved. Psychologically, it makes sense. Humans adapt quickly to improved circumstances, a phenomenon researchers call the hedonic treadmill. Once a higher standard of living becomes normal, satisfaction resets, and spending continues climbing without increasing long-term happiness. Research summarized by the American Psychological Association shows that beyond a certain level of financial stability, increases in income produce diminishing emotional returns, meaning happiness stops rising proportionally with earnings. This explains a strange modern reality. Many high earners still live paycheck to paycheck. According to surveys reported by financial research platforms like Lending Club, a significant portion of people earning six-figure incomes still struggle financially because expenses scale alongside earnings instead of remaining controlled. Wealth builders do something different. When income rises, they allow lifestyle to improve, but only partially. A simple framework many financial planners recommend is this: whenever income increases, split the raise. Enjoy some of it, but automatically direct a meaningful portion toward investments or savings. This creates a powerful gap between earnings and spending. And that gap is where wealth lives, because wealth is not defined by how much you make. It is defined by how much you keep. Rule 3 protects the progress created by Rules 1 and 2. Without it, higher income simply leads to higher obligations, and financial freedom keeps moving further away. But even people who master spending control often miss the final rule, and it may be the most counterintuitive one of all. Rule 4, think long term. Modern financial culture encourages speed. Quick profits, fast success, short term wins. But wealth historically has rewarded patience far more than brilliance. Markets rise and fall constantly. Economic crises appear. Headlines trigger fear, and many investors react emotionally, buying when prices are high and selling when uncertainty appears. Ironically, this behavior often guarantees weaker results. Data analyzed by investment firm Dalbar has repeatedly shown that average investors tend to earn significantly lower returns than the markets themselves, largely because of emotional decision-making, entering and exiting investments at the wrong times. Long-term investors behave differently. They accept volatility as normal rather than dangerous. Historically, despite recessions, wars, and financial crises, diversified markets have trended upward over long periods. Visual data compiled by investment research firms like Fidelity shows that time in the market has consistently mattered more than timing the market. This rule changes how you interpret setbacks. A market decline stops feeling like failure and starts looking like part of the process. Short term noise loses power. And something remarkable happens psychologically. Financial stress decreases because decisions are no longer tied to daily outcomes. Instead of constantly reacting, you follow a system. Rule 4 transforms wealth building from an emotional activity into a patient one. Because time does something effort alone cannot do. It compounds consistency. When all four rules work together, the system becomes clear. First, you pay yourself before expenses claim your income. Then, you put money to work so it grows faster than inflation. Next, you prevent lifestyle inflation from consuming progress. And finally, you give compounding enough time to do what it has always done throughout financial history. None of these rules promise overnight success, but together, they quietly shift the trajectory of an entire financial life. And the reason this system works is almost frustratingly simple. It removes the need for constant motivation. You don't need perfect timing, you don't need financial genius, you don't even need a massive starting income. You only need structure, repeated long enough for small decisions to become irreversible results. In the end, building wealth is not about being lucky, brilliant, or earning an extraordinary salary. It is about following a simple system long enough for small actions to turn into big results. Imagine two people starting their careers on the same day. They earn similar salaries. They live in similar cities. At first, their lives look almost identical, but one person quietly follows these four rules. Every month, a small portion of income moves into savings before spending begins. That money is invested instead of sitting idle. When income increases, spending rises slowly, not instantly. And most importantly, they stay patient, ignoring short term noise and trusting the long process. Years pass. Nothing dramatic happens overnight. There are no sudden riches or viral success stories. Just small, repeated decisions happening in the background, automatic transfers, steady investments, controlled spending, and time doing its quiet work. Meanwhile, the other person keeps waiting for the right moment to start. They plan to save later, invest later, think long term later. But later keeps moving further away. Then one day, the difference becomes visible. One life feels stable, calm, and secure. Unexpected expenses are manageable. Work becomes a choice instead of constant pressure. The other life still feels financially tight despite years of hard work. That difference was never about income. It was about structure. The four rules are simple because wealth itself is simple, but not easy. It asks for consistency instead of excitement, patience instead of urgency, and discipline instead of motivation. And that's the real takeaway. You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You only need to start one small action today. Saving first, investing regularly, spending carefully, and thinking long term. Because wealth is not built in one big decision. It is built quietly, one month at a time.